Welcome to We Are North Texas, a podcast brought to you by the University of North Texas system that focuses on innovation, compassion, ideas, and accomplishments in our home region of Dallas-Fort Worth. The UNT system is the only university system based in DFW and includes the University of North Texas, UNT Health Science Center, and UNT Dallas. With our heart in North Texas, we transform lives and create economic opportunity through education. Welcome to the We Are North Texas podcast. I'm Paul Corliss, Chief Communications Officer for the University of North Texas System, and really couldn't be more excited for today's podcast. We have brought in today a world-renowned saxophone player for the Dave Matthews Band. He has 3 Grammy Awards, a host of other musical accomplishments, and he's a 1990 UNT College of Music graduate. He also teaches improvisation at Vanderbilt. Jeff Coffin, welcome to the We Are North Texas podcast.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Man, there are so many musicians with just incredible chops that have come out of UNT, and you just, another example. And with the Grammys kind of coming up on the horizon on the 31st of January, you've won 3. I think UNT has connection to 15 nominations this year. What does it mean to be an alum of such a really prominent program?
Well, it's great. I mean, North Texas has a very, very solid and admirable reputation in the world, not just in music circles, but, in circles of production and engineering. All through what's called the industry, like the music industry, it's not just the players, it's people that are, really behind the scenes also making such a huge difference. And so, there's a connection to that. There's a connection to Denton and the time that we spent there. It's, I think it's not dissimilar to, people that go through Berkeley. I think one of the differences with North Texas is that people, I think, tend to stay a little bit longer at the school, whereas at Berkeley you'll spend, a semester or two and
you're out on tour.
Yeah, back out on tour, right. And so I think that the educational part, because North Texas was originally designed, the music department, as an education platform,
right?
A degree. I think that that's always been a big part of it as well. I got my music education degree there. I was also, 4 credit hours short of having a jazz studies degree, which I was wondering why it took me so long. But it's great. I learned a lot there. Made a lot of great friends, practiced a ton. And, so my time there was invaluable to me, as a musician, as an educator, to really have a career in music,
Well, you're pretty unique in that your performance career is unbelievable. You're also a producer and you're an educator. It's a unique combination. Are there lots of musicians out there like you that kind of, do all of those things?
There's a few of us. I tend to wear a lot of different hats, and I enjoy doing a lot of different things. And even musically, even when I spent 14 years with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones,
right?
And I remember one of the greatest things that Bayla ever said to me. This is very early on when I started playing with him. He said you have to realize that this group isn't everything for any of us. And it kind of blew my mind, because I thought, wow, man, here is like one of the greatest ensembles on the planet.
Absolutely. And
he's saying that musically there are other things that they want to accomplish, and they still do other things. It's not, this group isn't everything to any of us. And I feel that way about everything I do, whether it's teaching, playing with Dave Matthews, running my label, writing the books that I write, et cetera, et cetera. All those things are part of what I do. And they inspire me. I'm very passionate about them, but it's not everything. None of those things is everything to me. If I just did DMB, I'd be like, man, I need to do some other stuff. If I was just teaching at Vanderbilt, I got to do some other stuff. That's just kind of how I'm wired. you know, and so I'm writing all the time and working on new material. I'm way ahead of myself. You know, I mean, there's so many things that just haven't come out yet. I mean, I've got 5 records in the can right now.
Oh, wow.
2 duo records that are coming out in the next 3 months, and then 3 other projects that are done, mixed and mastered with video, full video on one of them of the entire recording session, 5 videos for the other one. And so, you know, it's a lot of stuff, man. It's a lot of stuff. I'm spinning a lot of plates.
Has coronavirus delayed the rollout of some of that stuff? I would imagine you want to tour behind, you know, when you release something.
Yeah, well, it's delayed a lot of things.
Yeah, right.
But you know, it's also given me no. It's a good question, actually. It's also given me a lot of time to work on things that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to work on. So I've spent this time in a really good creative zone. I've been doing a lot of different things during this. But yes, in answer to your question, it has delayed certain things. But I haven't had this kind of free, open time since like the early 1990s, since right after I was out of college and when I moved to Nashville. And so I've been trying to take full advantage of that. And so right now we're in my studio. You can see it's a loft space above my garage, and
looks fun.
It's awesome, dude. So I spend 8 to 10 hours a day up here every day, and just working on things, creating, practicing, writing, mixing, doing work. It's kind of my office also, and so yeah, man. I've gotten to spend a lot of time with my wife. We've never spent this much time together, and which has been fantastic. We're cooking a lot together and hanging out and watching movies and taking walks, and so it's been really good, man.
Well, you're so diverse in ways that you're kind of making your living, that and I'm making an assumption here that you're hanging in there financially, but for this pandemic, for the musician that's sort of living gig to gig, it's got to be just crippling. Have you noticed friends or colleagues struggling?
Absolutely, yeah. Another one of the things that Bayla told me many years ago, he said, be smart with your money. He said it can go away in a day.
Right.
And, and we saw that with the shutdown, but you can also get hurt, you can have an injury or something could happen. And it can be literally instantaneous that, your ability to go out and tour or play music is over. And so, I've never been frivolous with my money. I was always smart with it. I always took that to heed. And so I'm okay, thankfully. I mean, knock on wood, I'm okay right now. And I appreciate you asking, of course. But many of my friends, absolutely, man, they're getting hit hard. And there's still a little bit of session work going on in Nashville, but Corona's spiking. I mean, the positivity is 1 in 5 in the testing. We're at 20%.
It's unreal.
And but one of the things that I've been doing since, I guess, the very beginning of April, is I've been live streaming every Friday, except for these last 3 through the holidays. I gave myself 3 weeks off, and I'll go back to it this next week.
Okay.
But I've been live streaming in raising money for local musicians, and the
local Nashville musicians.
Local Nashville musicians, gotcha. Yeah, to be able to pay them for sessions. Eventually, when we're able to start getting together and playing again, I'll start doing live sessions out of here again.
Cool.
And it's itastudiostreams.com. ITA is into the air, which is what I call the studio. And itastudiostreams.com. So I've raised over 10 grand so far.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's all in a PayPal account. And I know exactly how much is in there and, where it comes from and so on and so forth. And so all that money will be funneled back into the Nashville community. I also do these different line drawings, like for Charlie Parker's birthday, I did a bunch of line drawings, and a few people bought them online, so I was able to donate all that money to Music Cares. So I've been trying to raise money through this time also to sort of help, because Music Cares also funnels money into, people who need things during times, whether it's an operation, whether it's money to pay the bills, so Music Cares is under the Grammy Foundation, and it's a really wonderful organization to get involved with.
And our listeners can also follow you on Facebook at Jeff Coffin, Coffin, Jeff Coffin Music. I understand you push a lot of these initiatives through your Facebook page as well.
Right. Also Instagram at Jeff Coffin, or maybe Jeff Coffin Music. I can never remember, but anyway, you can find me. It's pretty easy.
Make sure we share that link on social media.
Just look for the blue circle with this check mark. You'll find me.
Absolutely. Well, we talked about some of the struggles, and I would think getting started as a musician is a struggle to begin with. Obviously you got your degree in music education from one of the premier music colleges in the country. In 1990, you get out of college, and then what happens from there? Were you already working as a professional? I'm assuming in some way you must have been, but how does that work where you get established and are able to, to live like a grown-up, so to speak?
Yeah, well, it took me a while to live like a grown-up.
It takes us all a while.
I was working when I was in North Texas. I was playing gigs and trying to balance that out with school, which is a challenge. But I was doing some gigs around the area. When I got out, I knew that I wasn't going to stay in Texas. And so I was trying to figure out where I was going to go. I almost joined the Navy.
Okay.
In their the Navy Commodores, their top military band. It's a different story altogether, but they offered me the gig twice and rescinded the offer both times.
Really? Any good story behind that?
There's a long story behind it, actually, and it's very strange. So anyway, so I drove back to New England with the intent of either moving to Nashville. I had thought about San Francisco. Everybody I knew in New York was super dark, so I was like, man, I can't do that. And but I went on.
It can be out there, and San Francisco for that matter.
Right. But so I went on a cruise ship for about 2.5 months to pay off my bills.
Okay. And
because I knew that wherever I wanted to go, wherever I ended up, I knew that I wanted to go there debt free. So I did that. I went on for 2.5 months, paid off all my debts. Literally, the only thing I bought in those 2.5 months was a little carved statuette on one of the islands that I still have. I think I spent $15 on it. But everything else went to paying off, whatever credit cards I had and whatever debt I had from school. And I moved to Nashville in the end of January 1991. So this is 30 years. And
they're pretty quick once you got out of debt. And then did you just try to get session work starting out, or how'd you get?
There was a little bit of session work. I mean, some of the same guys that were doing it then are still doing it now. And yes, I've done a fair amount of session work in town, for sure, over the years. And but there were some live gigs, and I was also, when I first got here, because there weren't a lot of gigs, and there weren't a lot of horn players. It's nothing like it is now. And but I was doing temp work. I was substitute teaching, whatever I had to do to pay the bills.
Sure.
And because I had never moved anywhere where I basically didn't know any other musicians, coming into a brand new scene and having to establish myself.
Yeah, it has to be daunting. How do you go about, proving that you've got chops to hang?
You go and you sit in and you become a part of the fabric of the community. And there's also a community music school that I taught at called the W.O. Smith Community Music School, which is a jewel in Nashville. They cater to about 700 kids a week. It's an all-volunteer faculty, and the kids spend 50 cents a lesson. It's pretty amazing. And that's wosmith.org for people that want to check that out and donate. So for $15, you can sponsor a kid's lessons for an entire year.
Oh, how cool is that?
It's amazing.
That's what a great way.
30 lessons. $15 is 30 lessons.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What? Okay, so you kind of are integrating yourself into the community there. At what point in time do you hook up with Bela Fleck?
Well, I had been running a jam session for a few years when Bayla and I met. And there was a drummer who had come through named Tom Pollard, who I believe still lives in New York, who knew Bayla. And he had come, I guess he's from Nashville originally, or lived here for a while. He had come back through to visit family. He had come to the jam session. And he called or texted Bayla. He said, hey, there's a horn player in town I don't think you know about. You guys should hook up sometime. And so I was in Aspen, Colorado playing with a band. The Flecktones were playing. I knew Vic and Roy a little bit.
Mm-hmm. The Wooten brothers.
Wooten brothers, yep. And so I saw Vic, and he invited us to the show. He said, whoever wants to come, just come on out. And so a few of us went to the show. And I wasn't sure I was going to stay for the entire thing. So I went during the set break to say hello and basically just say thanks for the tickets, Appreciate it. I'll see you guys back in Nashville sometime. And I met Bayla, and he said, man, I have a message to look you up when I get home. What are you doing here? So we chatted for a minute. He says, I'm kind of in gig mode. Let's talk after the gig. And so, of course, I stayed and, waited till after the meet and greet was over. And we hung for, 20 or 30 minutes just rapping about music and, kind of what I was doing. He said, let's get together after I get home and let's do some playing, man. Let's just hang out and do some playing. I said, great, And so I sat in one night with them in Nashville in December of 95, 96. Mm-hmm. I can't remember anymore. 96, I think. 95, I don't know, whatever, 96.
Somewhere in those late 90s.
The lost years, And it was great, man. Stuart Duncan, the great fiddle player, was supposed to play. His daughter had the flu that night, so Bayla said, man, just play the whole night with us.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, man, I don't know any of your tunes. So he said, it said fine. He said, he says it was around Christmas. So he said, we'll do a couple of these Christmas tunes, blah, blah, blah. I remember writing out the tune Sunset Road on a napkin and literally taping it to my microphone, And it went really well, man. It was super fun. And, Bayla and I got along really, really well. We still do. I love him to death, man. And, a couple of days later, he called me up and asked me if I was interested in doing some dates with them in 1997, and I spent 14 years with them.
Incredible, and part of 3 Grammy Awards during that time, right?
Right, yeah, and that's how I met the guys in Dave Matthews Band. We did a bunch of opening dates along the way, and we would sit in with them and got to know Roy and all the guys, Roy and I would just sit around and talk saxophone shop. We could clear a room like that, bro. We'd be like all our stuff would be laid out, gear like necks and mouthpieces and horns and anybody else in the room, they'd just be like, oh, okay, I'll see you later. Right. Because only saxophone players want to talk about that stuff.
Well, it was an interesting, and we were talking a little bit before we started recording that I'm a kind of a music nerd, and during that time when you were kind of breaking through with the Flecktones, I was following around Widespread Panic and other jam bands, and the Flecktones were certainly part of that scene, and there were a lot of sax players that kind of were coming up, or horn players, Carl Denson or Skerrick or.
I know both those guys very well.
Galactic, all of those guys. So you guys were kind of carving out a spot in sort of a guitar-driven musical genre where guys like you were kind of breaking through. Do you feel like you kind of, created some opportunities for folks moving forward?
Looking back, probably. I think that all that stuff was creating opportunities, creating a different way of looking at some things. Those guys that you mentioned, we think of improvisation as belonging to jazz, and which is just not the case. Jazz is a big umbrella, in a word that, quite frankly, probably shouldn't even be used anymore. And it's limiting in a lot of ways. But those guys you just mentioned, Ben, Skerrick and Carl, and many other guys. They're not kind of in the straight ahead scene, but they're every bit as badass as all the guys in New York, Right. And they've just taken a different pathway, and So I'm inspired by that. I'm inspired by all those guys. I mean, I love those guys, and I've spent a lot of time with them over the years. But I also love the straight ahead scene, and I love the avant-garde scene, you know? So, I don't know. I mean, the music that we listen to is Black American music,
Right.
you know, and that's what we've grown up with. And it goes beyond that. I mean, certainly for me and for these other guys that you mentioned, you know, the music of New Orleans, which is, you know, music from Africa and South America and the islands, and blues, and, you know, the rock scene from Seattle with Skerrick, and, you know, so I think that we're all kind of forging our own musical path, and hopefully being inspired by one another along the way. So I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you know, I look at it as music. I you know, like even the whole jam band thing, I never understood that exactly, you know, because like people would call the Flecktones a jam band. I'm like, are you really listening to what we're playing?
Right.
You know, right. I mean, even with Matthews, like, I think it's because there's extended solos. I think that's what.
I think you're right. It's
that's where it comes from.
It's an easy hole to toss it in, right?
Right, and a lot of people think of the term jam band as sort of like this very simplistic kind of way of looking at music, and I'm like, man, neither of these two bands I've played with and made my career with have anything to do with simplicity.
Right.
You know, it's like asymmetrical forms and odd meters, and different time feels and groove feels. And this is some very sophisticated music, and you know, and I'm so grateful, man. I feel like I've had the two best gigs of my generation. You know, I mean, I've had you know, 25 plus year career already.
Amazing.
And I'm so grateful, man, every day, and you know, but the educational stuff is as important to me as that also. In some ways more important, you know, to be able to sit in you know, one-on-one with a student and work on their process also. It's huge to me, man. I love it. In fact,
your focal point at Vandy is improvisation. That's what you're
I teach privately, and I teach improvisation there. Yeah. And well, I mean, I teach also, you know, learning to play changes. I've come to realize that improvisation and playing changes are two different things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I've only kind of come to that division recently. They're very connected, okay, but there's also a division between them. The improvisational part of it, improvisation has a Latin root of improvisus, which translated literally means unforeseen, unexpected surprise, mm-hmm. Right? So improvisation doesn't belong to any genre of music. In fact, it has nothing to do with music, the word itself, right? So when I'm teaching someone to understand chords vertically, okay, to sort of understand what I call the bones of the chord.
Sure.
As it's moving along horizontally, there's a grid that's going on. So that's what we're trying to understand first and foremost. How does music exist vertically as it's moving along horizontally? The creative element of that, the improvisational element of that, is something entirely different, you know? And so that's up to the imagination of the musician. That's up to my let's see, how do I put this? My acknowledging that they already have permission to explore, mm-hmm. and to get them to understand the same thing. They don't need my permission. You dig? You know, so it has to be up to them to create. And one of my jobs is to open them up to that. One of my jobs is to get them outside of the box. One of my jobs is to inspire in them the sense of exploration, you know, and to sort of get outside of themselves by inspiring them through music, also through art, through philosophy, through life. You know, at the end of the day, what I'm really talking about, and what we all as educators are talking about, is life. I'm just using music as the metaphor.
Right. So you're developing, I would think, at least in my experience playing music and improvising with the band I'm in, it's getting that confidence to take that leap. And then, when your bandmates back you up, jump in there with you, it's such an incredible feeling that you've taken this leap to improvise, right? At least that's how I look at it to a degree.
Well, there's a great saying, leap and the net will appear.
Yeah, right.
Which I really love. And I tell my students, I say, look, man, I'm not asking you to leap alone. I'm going to leap with you. Yeah. Let's go. Let's jump off the cliff, baby. Let's do it.
And what a feeling when that happens.
Oh, no question. I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking, like right now I have goosebumps thinking about it, just thinking about that process for students, Yeah. It's so incredibly exciting. And my very dear friend, Brad Lely, teaches at North Texas, teaches saxophone there. And we were at North Texas together. We were in marching band together. We were in band together. And he's a brilliant educator and cares so much about the kids. And he's such a beautiful, brilliant player. Plays with Lyle Mays also. I'm not Lyle Mays. Who's the? Oh God, I'm spacing his name. He was married to Julia Roberts.
Lyle Lovett.
Lyle Lovett.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lyle Mays. Lyle Mays was an old alum who passed away last year tragically, but he plays with Lyle Lovett. And
I'm going to have to hit Brad up. We'll have to get him on the podcast.
Oh yeah, he's great. Man, he's so funny too. Oh my God, he'll crack you up.
I'll reach out to him. I've got to segue into talking about the juggernaut of a band that you're with now. And
sure. Let me mention one more thing in the education world.
Please.
One of the endeavors that I've just started, and I'm in the process of getting ready to launch, is called the Sax Loft.
Okay.
The saxloft.com, and it's with two other saxophone players, the great Kirk Whalum and the very amazing Tia Fuller. If you've seen the Pixar animation Soul, have you seen that yet?
Yes.
She's the saxophone player.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, so it's the three of us spearheading this thing, the saxloft.com. And people can sign up on the website already for the mailing list. We're going to start having Zoom meetings. The first one is tomorrow. And so we're really excited. We believe it's the future of saxophone education.
And you also have books out on other woodwind instruments too, right? You're not just.
I do, yeah. I have a bunch of different things out. I've been writing these etude books. I've got them for flute, clarinet, alto, and tenor, and I'm also putting the same etudes out for trumpet and piano. And I self-published. I've got a set of 3 saxophone books out called the Saxophone Book. I've got a book called the Road Book, a musician's guide to the road, to navigating the road before you even leave the driveway.
Where's the best place for us to get to your books?
JeffCoffin.com.
Okay. Jeff.
Yeah, all the links are right there. Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
All the music, all the books, everything.
You ready to talk about Dave Matthews Band a little bit?
Let's do it.
I mean, so just for our listeners that may not be familiar, I think most people, even pop culture wise, Dave, he's appeared in Adam Sandler movies, right? I mean, Dave Matthews Band really kind of exploded, 1995 or so, and had some big hits, but I was just looking up some of the revenue stats just because it's so hard to do what Dave Matthews Band does. The data I got from 2018, $12.2 million from touring, 7 straight albums have debuted #1 in the Billboard 200. Amazing for any band, let alone one that's really so sophisticated and hard to classify, I think. You got hooked up, you said, when you're with the Flecktones touring with Dave Matthews Band. And then things evolve and you end up kind of replacing a legend and a founding member. How did that all come about?
Well, Roy had a very bad ATV wreck. Leroy Moore, the original saxophonist, one of the founding members. And he broke a bunch of ribs, clavicle and a scapula, punctured a lung. And they were in the middle of a tour. He was home for, 3 days or something. Hit a ditch with his 3-wheeler, or 4-wheeler rather. Got thrown into a bunch of rocks. And so I got a call, I want to say it was July 1st, something like that. And from the Flecktones manager. And he said, he's going to recover. He says, but Roy's had a very bad accident. And they want to know if you can sub for him for a few months until he recovers. And I said, tell them yes. I said, when do they need me? He says, right away. I said, what's right away? He said, the next gig's tomorrow in Charlotte.
Oh,
And I was in New York. I had gone to a friend's wedding. I was driving when I got the call to Massachusetts to visit my grandmother. And I was going to spend a few days and then fly home. And I said, okay, tell him yes. So I had my stuff driven from Nashville. I flew down early the next day. I said, I need a bunch of staff paper, a 3-ring binder, some plastic sheets to put the music in, a music stand and a light, and a bunch of pencils and a sharpener, and a big eraser. And so Rashawn came in early, and Dave came in early that next day. And as fast as I could write, we were just writing out parts. With barely, just like total chicken scratch. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And and Rashawn knew all the parts, man. He saved my butt, no question, because he knew all the parts. And he would sing the rhythms. I would write them down. Here are your notes, blah, blah, blah. Next tune. So we got a set together. Then the next day we would do another set, then another set. And so we had a bunch of material because, again, it was just supposed to be for a few months. Sure. On August 19th of 2008, Leroy passed from his injuries. Very tragically, very suddenly.
So sad.
And very shockingly. And so we were in LA that day. And I remember the very first thing I did was I called Bayla. And I remember it was like this weird beep like I had never heard before, like this ringtone. And he was like, hello? And I told him what was up. He says, man, I'm in China. He says, my phone hasn't worked the entire time I've been here. Right?
Crazy.
And I was like, that's really weird.
Yeah, no kidding.
And, but, for some reason I was able to get through to him. And I mean, I couldn't think of anybody else to call but him. It was my first person I reached out to. And so, I wouldn't have been surprised if the band had folded up, quite honestly, at that point. Founding member passes.
Yeah.
And, someone that is that much of a fabric of the sound of the group. But the band kept going. I watched the band heal through music. And at the end of the year, we talked about me staying on. I talked to Bayla and the guys, and he said, look, man, he says, you got to do it. He says, we've been taking some time off to do other projects. He says, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you. And he says, the way that you play and what you can bring to that situation, he says, you got to do it, man. That's a leader.
That's incredible advice.
And so I've been with Dave now this is my 13th year, almost as long as I was with the Flecktones.
When you jump in there, I'm imagining, and I'm looking at it from a fan's perspective, you want to hear some signature licks, right? There's certain things that you're listening for that you're ready to go crazy for as a fan. And I'm sure you have to balance that with sort of your own style. How did you go about doing that where you're still being true to yourself, but also, delivering what that audience has an appetite for?
That's a great question, man. So this gets down to sort of playing a role in an ensemble. And because it's a horn section, it's a little different than if I was just playing solo tenor.
Sure.
So between me and Rashawn, we have to be one unit. And so that's my role in that band, is to be not only a soloist, primarily I'm a member of the horn section, the two of us, but I'm also one of the primary soloists in the band. As there's 4 of us now, with the addition of Buddy Strong, and so there's still 4 main soloists in the ensemble.
Is Tim Reynolds with the band full time?
Yeah, yeah.
He's such a unique player too.
Oh, he's beautiful, brilliant. So, with the parts, a lot of the stuff is from stuff that Roy used to play. The way certain solos start off are kind of signature, like you'll hear, in Hotel California, the guitar solo. Like if it's played differently, it's like it's not the same tune.
Right.
So I had to learn all that stuff. I had to learn basically 150 tunes, memorize 150 tunes for the gig. So I had to learn all that stuff. That's what the gig is.
Yeah.
And I've never worked as hard in my life. I'll be quite honest with you. But it's important to me to do the best job that I can possibly do, and to not slough it off and go, oh, it's good enough. No, it's not good enough, man. The audience, with both the gigs that I've had, I've come into already established bands.
Sure.
the audience knows the music better than I do. Let that sink in.
It makes sense. Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
the audience knows the music better than I do. So I've got to get to at least where they are. Then I've got to go beyond that. I've got to get to a point where it's part of the fabric of who I am and how I play.
Right.
So, I've always told people, I said, now, Leroy Moore is as much an influence for me. I've listened to him at least as much, and likely more at this point, than I have any other saxophone player. More than Coltrane, more than Sonny Rollins, more than Ornette, et cetera, because of this gig. I've had to learn this stuff over the years, and so his influence is woven into the fabric of who I am. Therefore, he's woven into the fabric of my students, the other people that I play with. These ripples continue, man. These threads of who we're influenced by, of who we've played with. People ask me my main influences, and it's always the people that I've played with. And then secondary come people like Sonny, Coltrane, Bird, Cannonball Adderley, Ornette Coleman, Miles Davis, Freddie Hubbard, Tony Williams, Elvin Jones, et cetera, right?
Right.
But it's always going to be the people that we've been making music with. Those are the people that I've been day and night with, creating, figuring out music and growing with, and having conversations about music and listening to music with and experiencing life with. I mean, that's what it is, man. It's not sitting in a practice room somewhere. We have to express life. Art imitates life. Art doesn't imitate the practice room. Or if it is, it's a pretty boring art.
Such a unique way to leave your mark on the world, your legacy, right? You talk about your relationship with Roy and the musical influence on you, and now down to your students. Such a neat sort of I don't know, quote the Lion King, circle of life sort of thing.
Well, it is a circle of life. Yeah, I mean everything is connected, and I've known that for a long time, and so and I believe it goes both ways. I mean we're in some pretty rough times these days in a lot of different ways.
And crazy times.
There's some crazy times. And I think a lot of it, man, is that there's a huge lack of empathy. There's a lack of compassion. And I think that all of that, in my opinion, comes from a lack of listening. And I teach listening. That's at the top of the fundamental food chain for a musician, is listening skills. And there's a great clue in the word listen on how to become a better listener. And that is, if you take the letters and you rearrange them, it becomes the word silent.
I love it.
And so I think that one of the reasons that certain people are in the streets is that because nobody's listening. And when people aren't listening, people get angry, they get sad, they get depressed, they get upset, they get frustrated. So I think that if we can get to a better point of listening, just with ourselves, because that's the only thing that we can ever change is ourselves. My opinion is not going to sway somebody else. They have to be that change, And so that's one of the things I think with social media that's so awful. I call it anti-social media. Nobody's listening.
Right.
Everybody wants to be heard, and nobody's listening. And it's a frustrating situation for a lot of people. And I get frustrated sometimes too. I hate the vitriol. I hate the name calling, right, and the way that people talk. It's just awful, man. It pains me. It literally pains me to see that and to witness that. And I just want to have dialogue with people, I just want to have dialogue with people. It doesn't mean I'm not upset about things, but, I'm not going to call you names and belittle you because I disagree with you. I mean, can't we get beyond that?
And
I mean, maybe we can. I mean, people are like, this is
the right thing, right? To be able to interact. And what an incredible opportunity to be able to have access to somebody like you, if I'm an upcoming musician, to be able to engage with you on social media. What a unique opportunity that didn't exist when you and I were kids.
Well, that's true. Yeah. I mean, the barriers have been broken down, and but I still I think it's really important also for there to be some distance, because I am a private person.
Sure.
And people will come up to me sometimes, when I'm on the road, if I'm having dinner with my wife. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. And right there, it's already over, because obviously you did mean to interrupt. That's why you did.
Yep.
And sometimes the answer is no. Like, hey, can I get a photo? Man, I'm having a conversation with my wife. No, sorry. Another time, and sometimes people are like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? Piss off, man. My time for you is on stage. Absolutely. My time for me is when I'm not on stage. And if you don't like it, that's on you.
How did your life change when you joined the Dave Matthews Band, the biggest, touring act in the world, really? I had to completely change your life. Living, now you're a rock star.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but I mean, notoriety-wise, it changed. I mean, we're playing in front of, millions of people, man. I mean, it's crazy, I mean, not on one gig, of course, but over the course of time, we're playing in front of millions of people. And that's, that's the dream, I think, for most musicians, certainly not all. But the dream is to try to connect with people, to play music that connects with people, that moves people, that heals people. I mean, I've heard stories through the years of, people being played this music coming out of comas, that kind of thing. I mean, like crazy kind of stuff. And, music is vibration, and we're all made up of vibration. Everything is made up of vibration. So it makes sense that vibration can heal us. And that's been something in the yogic traditions for, thousands and thousands of years. And doesn't mean that we're invincible or we're going to live forever, but music possesses a healing quality to it. And I think that's why people love music so much. You can be Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Independent, Christian, agnostic, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever. But, and you can disagree on all that stuff and find yourself at the same concert.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it's a great unifier. Now, here's the thing, man. Like, I'll be on social media sometimes, like, man, you should just play your horn and shut up. And I'm like, man, that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. I am never going to stand down from what I consider an injustice or something that is not right. I will always stand up for that, like it or not. Agree with me or don't. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not living my life for somebody else. I'm living my life based on how I was brought up, the ideas of treating people a certain way, that all of us are equal, that no one is better than anybody else, that we all have the right to worship whatever we choose, and to be who we are, to love who we want to love. And, people are living in fear of the way other people live. And we're seeing a lot of things fall apart, man. Even these last few days, with people storming the Capitol. And, I denounce violence on any side of the aisle in any way. I abhor war. I abhor fighting. But it's kind of like, for students, the most dangerous period for students are between the hours of 3 and 6 p.m. when they get out of school and their parents aren't off work yet.
Yep.
And so what I think is happening is that for all these folks who are dealing with the pandemic, they're frustrated, they're angry, they're not getting any direction from the top. They have a lot of time. They get on the internet, they get fueled by these conspiracy theories, and they get worked up by that, And so next thing you know, man, like the defecation is hitting the rotating oscillator. And and people aren't really thinking about what they're doing. They're just jacked up on adrenaline and these conspiracy theories, and there's an energy to that.
It's scary.
It's a scary energy. Yeah. And
well, I appreciate the thought that you're taking in answering these questions. And I as we wind down time, I kind of had a selfish exercise. I hope you
sure, of course, man, by all means.
Just invite me doing my homework on your career. Some of the folks you've played with are just, musicians or bands that I just love. And I just wanted to kind of run through a list and get quick comments, kind of quick hit through some folks that I've seen you collaborate with and get your take. So I'll start with My Morning Jacket, rock band, led by Jim James, a real dynamic frontman out of Louisville, Kentucky. What'd you do with them, and what was that like?
I did a couple of things with them. We played Bonnaroo, and I also did a really fun New Year's gig with them at Madison Square Garden a number of years back. And man, they were great. It was super fun. It was a horn section thing, and the connection for that came through a buddy of mine who in Cincinnati, he's a music therapist, a world-renowned music therapist named Brian Schreck. And he had gone to school with these guys, and he had gone to Berkeley. He played saxophone. He and Rashawn know each other, actually.
Okay.
And it's fun. I got to tell this story. So he's got red hair, kind of a shorter cat, definitely Irish blood. And he's a happy dude, man. Like, he's an amazing, amazing doctor. He's like Patch Adams kind of character, right? Okay. So Rashawn said at Berkeley that he just kind of had that disposition of the Lucky Charms guy, the leprechauns. So they nicknamed him Lucky. He was at Berkeley, and
love it.
So every time we see him, Rashawn's like, "Lucky, what's up?" Gives him a big hug.
So great.
And, but man, he's changing lives with these people. Man, he takes heartbeats and turns them into song, so that like their parents, these are children with terminal illnesses. It's horrible, and that he turns their heartbeats into music, so that when they're gone, their parents can listen.
Oh wow. So moving. Goodness gracious, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's
okay. I'll move forward in the sake of time. David Crosby.
Yeah, so through Snarky Puppy is where I met David.
Okay,
and,
a couple UNT folks in Snarky Puppy.
Yeah, and so I've done a bunch of work with Snarky Puppy over the years, and
I actually booked them at the Maple Leaf Bar. By the way, we were talking about the Maple.
Oh wow, right on. Yeah, down in New Orleans.
Mid 2000s, yeah. Anyway,
yeah, I love those guys, man. And so I met David through them. I played on Family Dinner too, and David came through and played Symphony Hall here in Nashville, and went and did some playing with him there also. And he's a good dude, man. He's a very solid cat, and he's a people person. He's a maverick, but he's fighting the good fight all the time.
Amazing life he's lived and so
he's
put himself through. I mentioned to you earlier, Widespread Panic. I've seen Widespread Panic more than 100 times. So gotta ask you about what you did with those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I sat with them a few times back in the jam band days of the Flecktones, because we would find ourselves on festivals at the same time and different things. And I mean, they're great. They're fantastic, and great musicians. They've got an incredible reputation. I mean, they've been around for a long time now too, man, and they're still creative and doing their thing.
Another band that gets lumped into that jam band classification, Humphreys McGee.
Love Humphreys. I do every New Year's with Humphreys, and I have for like the last 13 or 14 years. I guess you're getting ready to. So Chris Myers lives in Nashville, just a few miles away from me, and I think the entire band is coming to town the end of the month to do a live stream from Chris's place. He's got his basement all decked out with video and all, and so I think they're going to do a live broadcast out of Chris's house. But no, I love those guys, man. So we met back in the Flecktones days. We did what was called the Acoustic Planet Tour, and we had out Mark Broussard and Humphreys as the two bands that were touring with us, and we had different groups along the way. Chris Thiele came out and Grace Potter. a bunch of different folks. And so we would all collaborate also and do different things. So that's where I met them. And when they started doing these New Year's gigs, Michael Magadog, Mad Dog, I can never pronounce his last name, out of Cincinnati, Madagavralu, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not going to help.
It's all Greek to me, and I think it is Greek actually. But he's in the horn section. So we have a horn section every year. And when they come through town, we play. And, if I see them out on the road somewhere, we play. And Chris and I have done a bunch of gigs together, and had Brandon on my live stream also. It's just super fun. I love those guys to death, man. Just brilliant musicians, and really inspiring.
Yeah, very, very, very cool and diverse. Yeah. A newer band I wanted to ask you about, it more in the indie genre, classifying folks. Cage the Elephant.
Yeah, I played on their. I think it was their first record. Maybe it was their first record I was familiar with, but I believe it was their first record. And I think it was myself and Roy Agee on trombone. Roy is a brilliant trombonist here in town. Played with Prince, and he was the horn section leader for Lauren Daigle's group for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And I think she's gotten rid of the horn players recently, which is unfortunate. But COVID,
Yeah.
But yeah, those, like they reminded me at the time of kind of like a young Rolling Stones kind of vibe, mm-hmm. Irreverent and loose and fun and whimsical. And they just, like the perception is they don't give a shit, but they really give a shit.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important. Like the music is really important to them. They've had a wonderful career, man. People love that band, and I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, they're very cool. I'll ask you one more. It's another selfish one for me. The band
sure.
I've seen a bunch. Fish.
Yeah, I sat in with Fish one time. I've known those guys for a while. I did a gig on Jam Cruise one time with John Fishman, and taught him how to play saxophone in 15 minutes, and had him in the horn section.
Oh my goodness, that's so cool!
It was really fun. There's a band called the Everyone Orchestra, and so there's like kind of a cavalcade of people, but when we sat in with them, it was with the Flecktones, and it was in I believe it was in Lyon, France, and and I don't think they do a whole lot of sit-in stuff, so it was unusual and super fun, and yeah, it was great, man. It was great. Those guys are without peer, and amazing musicians. And I remember John was telling me about when they first got together that they would practice 8-10 hours a day every day, man. And that's why it feels telepathic with them, is that they've grown up making music together. It's like the Wooten brothers when they play together. It's like, man, you can't teach that.
Yeah, it's an extra sense almost.
It's familiarity, and that's the beautiful thing about being a musician, is that we get a chance to be in bands and get familiar enough with one another that it feels like telepathy, And but yeah, Fish is an incredible group of musicians, man, and I'm so glad that they came back after not playing for a number of years.
Absolutely.
I think that regrouping was essential for them. Obviously, it was essential for them. And man, I wish them another 30 years of success.
Fun stuff. Well, I appreciate you indulging me with those questions.
Oh, of course, man. My pleasure.
And I could keep on going, but we're going to be respectful of your time. Just as a closing question, and I like to ask this a lot during this challenging time that we're in.
Sure.
But what excites Jeff Coffin for the future? What gives you optimism and hope as we hopefully move out of the pandemic, hopefully move out of some of these challenges that we're having as far as the right, the left not getting along, as we kind of try to move forward, not just in our country but in the world? What gives you hope, reason for optimism, keeps you going?
Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful that the rhetoric will subside, that the antagonistic rhetoric is almost out of office, And, without going down the political rabbit hole, I'm just very strong about my views there. And that's been one of the things for me that's been very challenging during these last 4 years for me. The name calling, the bullying, the dog whistling, etc. Something else that really inspires me is art. That young musicians are playing at the level they're playing at. There's some extraordinary music out there, absolutely extraordinary, and a lot of young players who are creating in a way that's never been done before. And I feel like some of the bands that I've worked with have helped to pave the way for groups like Snarky Puppy, Ghost
Sure.
Note, and even getting further to the other music that's going on these days. People like Jacob Collier, Becca Stevens, Ambrose Akinmusere. The list goes on and on of these really brilliant musicians creating music that's fusing elements of improvisation, all genres of music, not just the umbrella of jazz, but a lot of elements of hip hop, African music, South American music, field recordings, folk music. The list goes on and on. It's a big melting pot now. And that's very exciting to me as a musician, to witness this music occurring, to be inspired by it, to also, for the last 30 years have been involved with that movement. I'm sort of like, yes, we're winning. And so, creation, being creative, finding creative ways of being creative. I'm really excited about the Sax Loft and, being able to reach students from around the world.
Saxloft.com, right?
The saxloft.com, yeah.
The
Saxloft.com.
Okay.
With Tia Fuller and Kirk Whalum. And but to be able to reach the breadth of people that we all reach individually, collectively, I think that we can do so much more. And so I don't know, man. I'm really in a place of wanting to give back, and I have been for many years. And it's something that's very meaningful to me. I'm still making a lot of music. I've got 5 records in the chute. I've got 2 duo records coming out in the next 2 months. One with Derek Brown, a great saxophonist. He does a lot of beatbox stuff on the horn. It's a duo record between us. And then another duo record with, Helen Gillet from New Orleans?
I'm not familiar.
She's a cellist. Maybe she got there right after you left, but she's a brilliant cellist. And so we have a duo record coming out also. And then there's 3 other full-length records that are in the can with groups. And so I'm really excited, man. I'm excited about music. I'm excited about teaching. I'm excited about moving forward and connecting with people. That's what I love.
Well, thanks for connecting with us, and certainly the entire University of North Texas community is proud of everything.
Good years there, man.
And everything you're
very
doing.
Grateful.
If you make it into town, you'll have to connect with us, and
for sure.
We'll be following along for the new music to come out. He's on Facebook, he's on Instagram, Jeff Coffin, Coffin, jeffcoffin.com. Check him out, and thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Hope you get Brad Lely on here too, man. Tell him I said
I guarantee you I will. Thanks
right
so
on.
much. And
thanks,
to our
Paul.
listeners, thank you so much for listening to the We Are North Texas podcast. I'm Paul Corliss. We'll talk to you very soon.
Right on. Thanks, everybody. Peace.
UNT World is a special place filled with talented and dedicated students, faculty, and staff that do amazing things every day. With our heart in North Texas, we transform lives and create economic opportunity through education. We are North Texas. I'm Paul Corliss. Talk to you soon.